what I wanted to say was we saw it play out a lot last year when I think that I don't know if you saw the guy that's in the UK that went on BBC and was saying something about
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah, it's I'm not even saying I'm not saying don't. I think what I'm after is as much as we share information. It's not as if people are coming in to flout the rules, but you going out intentionally to say, okay, this is what people do and this is how they misbehave, and like it's it amazes me. And like you said about one would think as we grow up as Nigerians, a community, we share food. We in fact we share the same holidays. Muslim, Christian, traditionalist, tribe, ethnic group. We share the same holiday. We share almost everything except information. And yeah, it's weird, and I think a study should be carried out. Why? Why don't you? Why don't you want? Maybe not. Why don't you want your neighbor to prosper? Or maybe why don't you share information?
Yeah, and do you think it's also tribal in some ways? Because I think of the Yoruba proverb, "Tishu and Yobata, Yoman for bone." Hopefully, I didn't murder
Mm.
that.
Oh
So we have
yeah.
that ideology that hey,
Mm-hmm.
until I have completely seen the result of what I'm working on, don't
Okay.
share it. Otherwise, I guess someone else may sabotage the work you're doing. I don't think it's the right
Mm-hmm.
ideology because, again, kind of what we are seeing now amongst Indians and other cultures, even the
Mm-hmm.
Jewish community. So I think it's
Yes.
really
Yes.
strong
Jewish community.
amongst them, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just different for us as Nigerians. So do you think it's tribal, or
Mm.
it's more so like a national idea as a Nigerian, or even an African thing? I don't know.
I don't know if it's an African thing because I have other friends from other parts of Africa, and my really one close friend is from Zimbabwe, and he tells me stuff. Oh, this is what you should do. This is how you should go about it. I mean, we came in through different paths, but there is just the part where he wants to share. And I know his community are really, they have their, every community, every tribe, every ethnic group have their own issues. But me relating to him, me to him, Nigerian to Zimbabwe, yeah, there's no, he tells me what I need to know when I ask, oh, how far can you do this for me? Specifically when it comes to immigration. He's fine with it. But then I like the fact that you say the proverb, which basically means if your shoe, if your, let's say if your issue, if your yam is not done, you cover it basically, which is interesting because when you say that, you would think that when the yam is done, you will say, okay, come and have it.
That's
But
true.
no,
They may give you
Nigerians,
the yam, but they won't tell you the process of how the
eh,
yam gets to be. It's not like I cooked this for 15 minutes. Like just go figure it out. You can
yeah,
start with
yeah.
yam and
But
but
continue.
do you find that is it's the case here though? Because maybe as you ask questions, I feel like a
Mm-hmm.
part of my journey here has also been people, which has been the African community where I've walked the same path.
Mm-hmm.
When I started out, it was a little different. Like we had folks who were all over the place. We're all students. Some people had more information than others, and evidently were more successful than others. But then as I
Mm-hmm.
came to Charlotte, I was in a different class of people where most of them were working, and they have gone through this F1 path, H1B green card, and in fact, some of them were citizens already. So when
Okay.
I had my own issues, I was able to come to them, and they were. I talked to one who was like, "You'll be fine." I was like, what do you mean I'll be fine? Like I'm so stressed right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then he guided me through the process. He gave me some of
Mm-hmm.
his contacts, and that really did help
Mm.
because I only had 1 year of OPT. So
Oh,
I only had one opportunity to try. Well, his
wow.
1 year to get the H1B, and I couldn't apply even in the first year due to when we talk later, maybe if you have some
Yeah.
questions regarding that. But I found that community eventually helped, but it wasn't my experience 8 years ago when I first came.
Mm. Yeah, that's interesting. yeah. I don't think I can categorically say, oh, okay, this is the problem. But I do know it's a problem, especially within the Nigerian community. And I'm not going to say, oh, other people are doing it. I did it. I'm not going to lie because, like you said, I think it's a way. It's a way of like that's how they brought us up. Like, oh, don't tell people so that they don't spoil
Mm.
your own route, or they don't mess it up. They don't say it was this person that said this.
Or go tell
Somehow,
someone that may now, and like the
exactly.
UK thing you were talking about, it's like
Yeah,
someone,
yeah,
it's like to
yeah,
prevent that from happening, let's just keep it to
yeah.
ourselves, don't share it.
And like it's immigration, so it concerns, or it's migration. It concerns your whole life. You're literally moving from one place to another, and you need information. And specifically the what you said about some people had more information than the other, and evidently it was evident from their outlook, from the way, oh yeah, because they knew this, they were more successful at certain things, which is um which is the whole point. In anything you need information, but um the culture of gatekeeping it is stopping the other person from getting where they're supposed to get to. And like again, the proverb, say it in English, the sky is big enough for everybody, for all the birds to fly. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's just interesting, and yeah, maybe someone should carry out this study. It's something I'm interested in anyway.
Yeah. Because, yeah, because it's not, maybe some people are trying to be more, what's the word now? To let the culture impact them or influence
Mm,
them less than some others, so they are more open
mm,
to sharing
yeah.
than others. So things are, that's why it's hard to categorically say that Nigerians as a
Mm,
whole are
yeah.
not as open to sharing information, because there are some that are.
Yep. True.
And also maybe it's also a function of sometimes we don't ask for help as much as we
Mm,
should.
I
So
think
like
there's
that
that aspect too.
vulnerability part of things too, where it's like,
True.
hey, I need help right now. How
Yeah.
can you help
Yeah.
me? But rather I just want to help me, especially if you're like in the same age group, you want to feel like, oh, I have it figured out. I don't want to share my business with anybody. But then if you don't, the other person doesn't know how to help you. So definitely it's going to be different factors. But when you do
Mm.
the research, maybe you should complete your PhD. The 1 year you start.
Uh, it was in information security, so I need to find. But that is interesting that you say people don't know how to ask for help. I mean, I was in that boat. It was almost as if it was a taboo to ask for help. Maybe that definitely is a big factor because here in America they have this saying about, oh, closed mouths don't get fed.
Mm.
But Nigeria, where I'm coming from, there's this whole idea: don't let this person know how how desperate you are. Like I want to say, fake it till you make it. In
Almost, yeah.
yeah, but so yeah, it's it's interesting. But anyway, this is the first episode of Aliens Beyond podcast, and thank you for coming on as the
Of course.
first episode for the new season. Not not for season three.
Yeah, honored to grace the first one. Hopefully,
Yeah.
I help with the next episode and the subsequent ones.
Oh yeah, yeah. Thank you, thank you. We've been away for a while. Like I told you before, we used to be three. Now later became one. We didn't fight, though, but we just scheduling is just hard. It probably will come on other episodes once in a while. But yeah, let me welcome back our guest. Where's the clap? Welcome back our guests, Abby, our audience, our listeners, everybody that has forgotten about us. Don't worry, we'll do sponsored ads for you people to hear us more, to know us more. And they will have a lot of new offerings. I don't even know how to I don't know how to do podcast anymore. It's not like I knew how to do it, but Anyway, long and short, we are back and we have our first guest, Mr. Tolu. Thank you for for gracing us. Thank you for being on the first episode of season 3 of Aliens Beyond Borders. What do you think of the name?
I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
The aliens part I can definitely relate to.
Oh, okay.
Because I mean, even America is not shy of putting that on
Yeah.
forms that you fill. It's like, what are you? Are you an
Yeah.
alien?
But you
Or
know, the
you're a
funny thing
citizen?
is, so we started about 3 years ago. That was when President Biden, I shouldn't just slam his name on his head. President Biden came into power, and there there was talks about it is wrong to use alien for immigrants now. There's something about it. I don't know. I don't know if he held for long, but it was around that time that we started and we're like, oh, should we change the name and stuff like that? But I'm like, nah, it's not about it's this is just about you being different in terms of culture, personality, in terms of ideology from where you used to be to where you're going to in terms of migration. But anyway,
Yeah.
interesting.
And
Mm.
when I heard it for the first time, as a person of faith, I was like, does it have some faith
Oh,
notion
okay.
behind it? Because it's like, well, the Bible says we are aliens, like essentially we are foreigners in this world, and
Okay.
heaven is our home. So it's saying, okay, we are aliens, and even though we're in Nigeria, we can be anywhere. There is no border or
Yeah,
boundary
yeah.
to our
Hmm.
alienness. So I guess the Christian in me
Yeah,
went in that direction, but I can also see how it applies to us as immigrants because
yeah.
we definitely have crossed borders.
Mm. Yes, yes, we have close the border on some people. Anyway, that's the whole point of the podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Answered. Answered is a platform, question and answer platform for immigrants, potential immigrants. Ask questions, share stories, and get information. Have you tried Answered before? Probably not. Do you?
I actually did. I got the link
Okay.
from when Daniel shared it with me. It was
Oh,
on there, so I looked it up and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Because I
mm,
end up using Facebook groups for the information gathering,
yeah.
but I think it's
Mhm.
good to have a platform like that where
Yeah.
people can answer questions because we always have questions with
Yes. Yes.
F1 and H1B and OPT and CPT. Just it's a whole thing.
All the abbreviations. I don't even think I know. I wanted to say I don't think I know the full meaning of OPT, but I just know it's OPT. I know
Yeah.
optional. Oh yes, I
I think
think
it's
I do
optional
know.
practical training.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
I do know. But when I started out, I'm doing OPT. Have you ever? Did you? Oh, you did. Oh, yeah. You said you did OPT for 1 year.
Yeah.
Has anybody ever asked you? Okay, what are you doing? And you're trying to explain that is OPT.
Oh, yeah. Especially my American friends, or
Yeah.
maybe Nigerians who were born here and never had to go through that path.
Mm,
I have to take them back to how F1 visas work, how I cannot work in the state, how I need an authorization to work. And it's like,
yeah.
really? You cannot work? I'm like, yeah, I can just walk into Walmart and say I need a job. Like,
True.
that's not how it works.
Yeah.
We are definitely not disadvantaged. We have limits to how,
Limits. Hmm.
which makes sense. I mean, I would
Yep.
expect that if I'm a citizen of a country, I should have more rights than somebody who just came in from outside. So
Yep.
I
Yeah.
I get it.
Hmm. Yeah. Interesting. Speaking of, Happy New Year, by the way.
Yeah, they say you shouldn't say Happy New Year anymore after the 12th of the month. I
Oh,
think.
really?
No,
This.
I was listening to this podcast the other day,
Oh, okay.
and I think it was the 12th of the month, and the person was like, "Yeah, this is the last day to say Happy New Year. After
Really?
this, it's already 2 weeks into the new year. Don't."
I still say Happy New Year to people I've not seen. Like if I see them for the first time in June, I will probably still say Happy to you. I
Yeah,
mean,
because you haven't
it's
seen
just
them
fun. It's just
in
fun. Like,
2024. Yeah, yeah, I feel that
uh,
it's definitely some
yeah,
made up stuff by somebody.
yeah, but yeah. But before we go into your journey, immigration journey, a little about your immigration journey, or as far as you want to talk about. So, what we'll do is on the podcast is we talk about what's going on around, particularly about migration, immigration. what's been said, how people are reacting to it, and then your reaction. There's this particular story from last week. It's not necessarily a story. It's more of a quote from a former governor, former minister of Nigeria. You probably heard Rotimi Amici, where he said, quote, "I've always discouraged people who want to leave the country, which is Nigeria. I say 95 is the job you can get. You may not get the opportunity we get in Nigeria. You can just wake up one day and you're already a minister or a governor. It just happens." So basically,
What? What?
this
What?
was
Talk about being out of touch. What?
see. So he was in Arise, a TV station in Nigeria. He was they were interviewing him, and I think they asked about the whole. Lots of people are leaving Nigeria, age groups from oh, majority. Like I mean, concerningly, it's the working class leaving Nigeria, professionals, brain drain, leaving Nigeria. And they asked him, how far? What do you think? And then he said that. I mean, I do have my thoughts. Not just even about the whole concept, oh, it's only 95, you can get there. Before we now even move into the statement of, you can just wake up one day and you'll be a minister or a governor.
Like, I
That
personally don't even know any minister.
it
So that's how.
is. So, what do you think? And I think there's been lots of talk about, oh, what you can do in Nigeria or what you can do in your home country, you can't do it somewhere else. Especially when you compare people that leave Nigeria. I don't want to use the word because I don't like the word jackpot. I have a problem with it. And we'll probably talk about it before the end of this podcast, or this episode. But let me. What do you think of that statement? What do you think of Amichi's sentiments of? Mm,
Yeah, as you were talking, I was trying to make sense of everything in terms of the opportunities in Nigeria you cannot have elsewhere. And I'm like, okay, what opportunities? I mean, yeah, I can't think of, like, I know folks who were doing well in
mm,
Nigeria, but then realized I am kind of capped in terms
mm.
of buying diesel for managing my business. Like, think about businesses who have left Nigeria, for crying out loud, and you're telling me the opportunities in Nigeria.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, there are opportunities everywhere. I get that, and I don't disagree. But for what percentage of the population?
What
What percentage of
percentage?
the population become ministers and commissioners and
Mm-hmm.
governors? Like, like I said, I don't know any politician personally. My parents probably do, but I don't have anyone on my contact list that I'm like, hey, you're the commissioner of X or Y, and you're saying I can just wake up one morning and become a commissioner
He didn't even say commission. He said
or a
minister.
minister.
I mean, maybe in his defense, he's saying you can. I don't even.
Oh, okay, maybe because as a result of you being a citizen of the country, you can rise to that level versus maybe, I mean, of course, as an immigrant, you can become the president, but
That's
you
actually
probably can
another
be
angle.
other offices. So maybe that's where it's coming from because, again, we all talk from our experience, and in his own experience, he's been in
Actually, though.
politics, and it's
Okay.
like, hey, like, why are you leaving this country where you actually have this opportunity? But I'm like, that's completely out of my own scope because I
Yep.
don't, politics has never really been something that I've been involved in either remotely or personally because my parents
Oh,
were not
okay.
politicians. They don't know who
Okay.
any politicians are. So the potential of me even considering it in the first place is low because I just, it's not something I aspire towards.
That's interesting. That's another angle. But I think aside that, why his choice of okay, can wake up today and become a minister, save you get elected to it. There should be a process. There's a whole
Do people
record.
get elected? You get appointed by maybe the person who was there before you. In some cases, let's not bastardize Nigeria.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get elected in some
Mm,
situations.
mm. But linking this to the idea that Western countries, I guess because of the rules, policies, is only good for 9 to 5. Do you think that is the case? Is that because we are limited in terms of visa or
Yeah, I'm wondering what it means by it's only good for 9 to 5.
I don't
Considering
know.
that, like the average, especially if you consider like the most successful people in the country,
Mm,
they actually say, in fact, the tax system favors those who are not 9 to 5. So that's not necessarily
mhm.
an aspiration. Like most of us in 9 to 5 aspire to, like when you see your taxes every year, you're like, really, I paid that, and it's gone.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you see people making millions and they paid $0 in taxes, or maybe
Hmm.
sometimes not zero, but much less, or just about the same amount I paid. And I'm like, I need to have a business.
I
So
need to have a
yeah,
business.
I don't think. Yeah, I think in that way it's probably a little out of touch too, because
Yeah.
in his own experience and maybe what he has heard, is it hard? I mean, like all of us, we had. I personally had moments where I'm like, did not kick me out of Nigeria. I should probably go back because this struggle
Oh my
is
god.
is a lot. It's like when you think about, oh my God, I have 2 months left for my work visa to
Yeah.
expire, and you're stressing, and it's like I can just go back home. Kind of, the prodigal son in the Bible, where it's like I'll just
Oh
go
my
back to my
god.
father because
Yeah.
this suffering is like it's not worth it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I can understand that perspective too. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
honestly like it's not easy, at least at first.
Mm, true. But I don't know. I guess it's like you said, I think it's from his own school point of view experience. Maybe he probably just woke up one day and he became a governor. I mean,
Or
he
he knew someone
definitely.
who mentored
He,
him, groomed him, and at least it was kind of in a
Mhm.
sort of process. But
Yeah, but
I
yeah,
don't have any mentor right now, so the
I know,
likelihood.
I know. Yeah, let's not even talk about how what data shows about immigrants and how they own or they are CEOs of or how they are more prepared to start companies in.
That's true.
I know it's just not just America, everywhere immigrants go.
Yeah, the society
Uh,
favors it.
yeah,
Yeah,
but anyway, that's
yeah.
that about that. I would love us to answer one question unanswered, but I think let's see if we have time the at the end of the episode. I guess let's drive straight into who Mr. Tolu is, how he came to the US. It's very interesting. I want to know how what happened between the year of your 1 year OPT because that was not my experience. I can imagine. I
Yeah,
had.
you had 3 years at least.
Oh my god! I don't know what I would have done. I probably wouldn't have. I think I would have just gone straight into PhD and not worry about.
I considered
But
it. I did.
but but yeah. Tell us what's and disclaimer: this we are not immigration experts. We are just sharing
Yeah.
our stories. We are just giving pointers, information about our own experience, personal experience. But yeah, what's what's your story? So,
Well, where do I start from, right? So I don't take all the time. So should I talk about my process from Nigeria to the States and
mhm.
maybe how I got to where I am right now?
Yes, yes. Oh, yeah, that works.
Okay, so feel free to interrupt me if you need to clarify
Okay.
anything. But I left Nigeria 2015.
Oh, okay.
And my leaving, I would say, was relatively easy because it was a study abroad program that was brokered
Ah,
by my college and another college here in the States. So I went to FUTA, and FUTA has
ooh,
this agreement with Florida A&M University where fourth year students, because it was most of, yeah, all of our programs then were 5 year programs. So fourth
yeah,
year students can come to the States and do their fifth year here,
yeah.
and then transfer their credits back to Nigeria to get their degree.
Hmm.
So most of the hard work in terms of applying to the school, getting approval for even funding. I mean, we got in-state tuition, which is something you don't
Oh,
get as an
wow.
immigrant.
Yeah.
So all of that was relatively easy. Preparing us for the interviews, we had
Mhm.
reps from FUTA, and we didn't have to pay FUTA. So honestly, kudos to FUTA for that.
Is this a non? Sorry.
It, which is a good question. Like, I didn't
Yeah.
even know about it until. I think close to the end of my fourth, before I went for IT, because you go for IT. IT
Mm.
is, what is IT
Um,
now? It's like some
internship.
form of intern, yeah, like an internship you have to do as a fourth year student.
Yeah.
So I was in this program with someone who was in his fourth year already. I was about to get into fourth year, and he was
Mhm.
telling me about this Futa Farm youth thing, and I was like, "Oh, tell me more about it." So it was through him I got to know. So it wasn't like really broadly announced in school,
Okay.
but thankfully I got to know it, and then I just emailed my dad. It's weird. I think when I say I
Yeah.
emailed my dad, it sounds so official. But essentially,
Yeah.
emailed my dad, and I was like, "Dad, X, Y, and Z. This is why I want to do this." And it's like, "Yeah, let's just ask and pray that it works out."
Okay.
Because again, there's the monetary aspect of things. So I got to know about that, and then Futa did most of the work. We had to pay the institution, pay for our interviews, and that was it.
Mm, okay. Were
So
you? How much was that? Even in states.
then we needed to show proof of funding because I
Okay.
think the minimum then dollar was not good, but it was much better than it is
Yeah, I
right now.
think
I think it
20.
was like 165
Yeah,
or
yeah,
something was the exchange rate. Then now it's 1,002, 1,003.
yeah.
So then I think you needed to show that you had a minimum of I think $4 million in your account.
Oh, oh,
So compared to
$4 million.
today, those were good days.
Okay.
Even though it was still hard then because my dad didn't
Yeah.
have $4 million in his bank account.
Mhm.
So we had to definitely figure out how to make that happen, like get money from friends and family,
Yeah.
and but it worked out. So what next after that? So I then went for the interview, and I got what is called what do they call this thing again? I'm blanking.
It's not F1.
Administrative processing. So I didn't get
Oh,
denied.
okay.
I didn't
Oh,
get
okay.
denied. I didn't
Okay.
get the blue letter they give you for denial,
Yeah.
but I got administrative processing with a couple of friends of mine because we kind of went in mass because there were like
Okay.
six of us. Actually, 13 people or so in my class. Six people had gone earlier. I went later with a couple of folks. So I got administrative processing. So instead of me to resume in September or August,
Yeah.
I ended up having to be delayed and I didn't get my visa until like late in October. So I couldn't
Mm,
resume until the spring semester in
yeah.
January. So
Okay.
that was a little bump, like
Mm-hmm.
starting out my journey. But eventually
Yeah.
I moved to Tallahassee, Florida, 2015 December. I'm not good with
Oh.
dates, but I remember this one, December 12th, 2015 was when I landed in the country.
Oh, you went through Florida?
I did, yeah. So no, the program was
Oh,
in Tallahassee, Florida. So
oh,
that
it
was where
was. Oh, okay,
family
okay, okay.
was. So landed
Oh,
in Atlanta first, and then Jacksonville, and then a couple of friends picked us up from
did you say
Jacksonville,
Texas A&M?
Florida A&M.
Oh, first I had sorry, I had
Well, when you
Texas.
hear A&M, I think you
Yeah,
automatically assume
yeah.
Texas,
Oh, okay,
but
okay.
so
Did
Florida
you?
A&M.
So when for administrative process, were you anxious or did you?
I wasn't, which was because I had a counterpart then who would always be like kind of calling and checking it because we both had administrative processing. But for the most part, I was just like, if it's God's will, it's gonna work out.
Mm,
I was a little perplexed because now my mates that because IT started I think April and was supposed to end in September, and then my colleagues who were going to be in their fifth year were going to be
mm.
resuming fifth year in FUTA in October. So
I
it
was
was
about
a
to.
limbo for me where I was like,
Yeah.
okay, am I going to FUTA or am I waiting for what may happen that I'll go study abroad in Florida? But I
Mm,
held on, and
okay.
thankfully, later in October that month, we got called back, and it worked out successfully. So I wasn't perplexed. I just had that hope and faith that okay, God has started His work; He's going to finish it,
We'll
and
finish
and
it.
and that's what happened.
Did they give you a reason why? Is this just to check?
They did not, but I think it probably was. Let me remember now. I think it was probably just the fact that there were many of us applying around the same time for the same school, and maybe it looked weird to them, and they just wanted
Okay.
to take more time, because you can have like six booths in the U.S. embassy, and you have
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
people. So one person had gone ahead of us, and maybe he wasn't given some answers the way he ought to have given them. So I think he now talks to his other colleagues, and I think after that guy, the remaining of us got
Yeah.
administrative process. He was denied, but eventually got his.
Okay.
But it was a whole process of wow, we have like six or seven people who had successfully gone and they were in the country already and we were still kind of
Yeah.
struggling to. So it was definitely a lot of emotional roller coaster, but I just felt like it'll work out, or if it doesn't work out, like
Yeah.
let it be the way God wants it to be.
Okay. That's interesting. I don't think I have not met any transfers or study
So that
abroad.
was a J visa actually. It wasn't an
Yeah.
F visa.
Okay, was it? Yeah,
So it
yeah,
was
yeah.
a student exchange visa, a
Yeah.
J. Yeah.
And that was for your fifth year, right?
That was my fifth year. So fifth year
Okay.
of college in Futa, but essentially my first year here. So I was with the senior students when I came here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Was
So
that?
essentially,
How was that like? Was that the culture and the process of?
definitely a lot of shocks.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say it was relatively easier because I think we were the were we first, second? I think we were the third or the fourth class coming
Okay.
from Futa that way. So we had folks who had gone ahead of us and that were able to like guide us through some of the processes and kind of the tips and tricks on how to survive. So in that way, we had a lot of support, I would say.
Yeah.
And driving is one of the big things when you move to the country also where you unless you want to take the bus and the bus, I mean, it's not New York or
Mm,
one of the great states where there's like good public transportation system. But the one we had was fairly okay too. I think
yeah.
it was like every hour or so. But the good thing, we also had a couple of seniors, I'll call them, who were already driving. So some of them would drop us off, take us to church, take us to grocery shops. So we didn't have to Uber
Mm,
quite a lot, but we still definitely had to take the bus.
yeah.
So that way, it was helpful. In terms of adjusting to the academic system, it was a shock too because I think back in Nigeria, a 70 is an A. I think it was
Mm,
70 to get an A, and then here was it? Is it 90? I can't even remember now. But
I can't
it
remember.
was it was kind of just different in terms of the grading system. And it's like, how can that? Or am I? I don't know if I'm flipping it. Am I flipping it? I can't
No, no.
remember.
I
But
think,
I know. I think there in Nigeria, I think you get
yeah.
an A. Was it
I
70
think
or it's
70. Yeah, because
when do you
yeah,
get an A in
US.
America?
An
I
A
can't remember now.
is 90. Yeah, I think so.
Yes, no, I'm right. So
Yeah,
it was kind of like a higher
yeah,
requirement to get an
especially
A here.
if they're now doing like the whole A plus or A asterisk.
A
Yeah,
minus, A plus, yeah,
yeah. So I think that's like
yeah. So I believe,
95. Yeah,
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 yeah. So it was kind of a different grading system for
yeah.
one. And then for the second one, my undergrad was in mechanical engineering. And of course, coming from a country where you learned mechanical engineering, coming to a new country where they probably have more experience with like maybe some software or how the practical experience they've had, or just the way they were taught in certain classes, and now having to be in the final year and doing some of the things that some of these guys have done multiple times. Having to like learn a lot of things on my own was definitely part of it. But ultimately, the support system we had really helped. And the immigration officer was honestly sent from heaven because she was so supportive. With like, oh, I can afford this payment right now. How can you help me
Oh,
extend the
mm,
payment? Oh, I'm expecting money from Nigeria. I can like she really really moved heaven and earth to help us like just get a lot of flexibility around
yeah.
money and funding and all of that.
So, which is when you say immigration, you mean the international school?
Yeah, international
Yeah.
office.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
okay.
international. Yeah, DSO.
Yeah.
Right, I think that's what we call them.
Yes, DSO. Yeah, it's always nice to have
Yeah,
a really honestly not an insult to anybody, but a well informed and empathetic DSO.
empathetic.
Yeah.
Honestly, yeah. Because
I,
I would think we stress her. Like, there's no time you go
yeah.
to our office and maybe one of us is not there.
Yeah.
It was like back to back. Yeah,
That's because one of the one of the issues that I have with I wouldn't even call it an issue. I'll say it like this. Leaving leaving school as an immigrant, the only choice that they seem keywords, the only choice that they seem to offer you in terms of routes is OPT. Is when you leave or when you talk to other people, they say, oh, you can do this. For example, in IW, you can do some other, you can go any other route that you want. I mean, I do understand F1 student visa is a non-immigrant visa category. You're expected to go back to your country. But honestly, I really would expect that, okay, this is the information, this is what we have, this is the policy. But then most times you hear people say things about DDS who doesn't even know as much as they should know. They are not giving me
And
the
that can
information.
negatively impact you too. That's true.
Yes. Yeah. But it's interesting. I'm happy that you had that experience with your
Yeah,
DSO.
she was helpful, and I think I didn't realize how. Oh God, I'm. No, let me not say it that way. Maybe you cut that
Mhm.
out so I don't bastardize my grad school. But I think I should still say I would say
Mm.
I didn't
Okay.
realize how, because this was undergrad, right? I was wrapping up
Yeah.
undergrad, finished that with a J, and then now applied for a master's.
Yeah.
And I was trying to get funding for masters at FAMU. I couldn't get it, so I
Hmm.
started to apply outside.
Yeah.
So there was this program at FAMU called a graduate feeder program where they kind of connect you with other master's programs
Okay.
across the country. So I got this one with Wake Forest, an amazing, amazing institution. But I didn't get the level of support I got
Mm-hmm.
from the DSO I had at FAMU, and I was like, oh
Mm-hmm.
my God, Copins is
Yeah.
godsend because she was really, really, really helpful in terms of like information she'll provide, and
Okay.
maybe she can be like, okay, talk to this person. Oh, you can maybe work here. You can get money. I mean, because as an F1 or J, you can get opportunities within the school to work. So yeah, it made me realize just how helpful she was, and how much of a
Yeah.
blessing she was
Yeah.
there.
I mean, it's not like I said, it's not, you're not getting at the other there. So it's just level of information. And also, it's
Yeah,
just,
comparatively.
yeah, the same way. I don't know if this is a good comparison, but the same way there are different doctors with different bedside manners. I guess that's the same way we have different
Because
DSS.
essentially you're doing your job, but she was going
Ex-
above and beyond. Because your job is to
mm,
just make sure their
yeah.
services is
Yes.
current
Yes.
and you're signing what you need to sign. But when you're now
True.
going above and beyond, checking on people and saying, "Hey, I know it's
Yeah.
hard to be an immigrant. How can I support you?" Like that's above and beyond.
Mm. Yeah, that's interesting. So from J to F.
Yeah, so I had to go back home for F. So when I got
Mm, it's good.
my admission to Wake Forest, I didn't know about that part. I didn't know that for you to be in the master's program, you need an F visa. So I got admitted, I think June. So I'd moved to North Carolina from Florida.
Okay.
And then I realized, I think I'd known, or I realized during that period that I needed to get the F visa. So I
Yeah.
needed to get permission from my school to take 2 weeks off because the program had already started. It was an accelerated program for 10 months. So I needed
Oh,
special
really?
approval. Yeah, it was a very, very fast-paced master's program.
Okay.
So got that and essentially went home for 2 weeks and was back and with my F1. And thankfully I didn't have any issues because I've
Ah,
heard of folks who go back home for the F visa and it's a hiccup.
yeah. That was 2016.
This was
26.
17. So
17.
I
Okay. Oh,
graduated
okay.
since I started in the
It's in
spring,
October.
it was a
Yeah.
class I could only take in the was it in the next spring, I think. So that
Okay.
kind of elongated my program by into 3 semesters instead of 2 semesters at
Oh,
FAMU. So that made it a little longer, but I graduated May 2017 from the study abroad program.
okay. Okay. Nice. So after that, what happened? Going back home,
Yeah, so
coming.
masters. Yeah, so I went back when I came back. It was fairly smooth, and
Huh?
I think I'm thankful for. Okay, maybe I should talk about the personal aspects of that, right?
Okay.
So finished the undergrad program, and then essentially was in the limbo of, okay, I'm not getting funding. I know how hard it was to pay for my undergrad, and I'm not trying to
Yeah,
put the
just to
burden
drag it.
of a master's degree on my parents again. So I was really trying to get tuition waivers, assistantships,
Yeah.
research assistantships, but I didn't want my master's in mechanical engineering. I wanted something more business related. So I wanted engineering management. But sadly, engineering management wasn't funding because I think they weren't doing as much research as
Hmm.
real like mechanical or metallurgical engineering was.
So
So
no, you did your master's was in engineering management.
undergrad, no, my
Okay.
undergrad was mechanical engineering. So this was me trying to make a decision. I
Okay, okay,
wanted
sorry.
engineering
Yeah.
management.
Yeah, okay, okay, okay.
Yeah. So, I didn't get funding, and it got harder for
Yeah.
I think the influx of a lot of Nigerians from FUTA into, and most
Uh,
of us were engineering students, so they were like probably 30 of us at some point in the engineering building, and many of us wanted funding. So it kind of just got harder and harder the more people came,
hmm.
which goes back to maybe what we're talking
So,
about.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, people don't want to share information because. So honestly,
True.
and I would say in some ways we're also disrespected. Just
Mm,
considering that it's like we were honestly like beggars in some ways, like we needed
mm,
this thing. So honestly, like a couple of us actually started looking outside because it just felt like we're not as appreciated as we would have loved to. Um,
and
so we
this is
started looking.
not. No, I just wanted to add that this is not about entitlement. This is
No, this
about
is not entitlement. Yeah, it was just the fact that we wanted it and we were like
yeah.
knocking on
There,
every door we could
there's a way you
to
tell
get it.
me, oh, okay, it's not available, and there's a way you
Yeah.
tell me, oh, dude, it's not available. Go back to your country. You
Oh no,
can
no, it
write.
wasn't like that. So not that
Okay,
disrespectful.
okay.
It was more so there were now policies in place that evidently didn't favor us, and it was in some ways.
Mm,
So now that you can't even there's like more hoops you have to go through to get
yeah,
stuff. Whereas in the past it was easier because there were fewer immigrants. So I
yeah,
kind of understand the give and take of it, where it's like, well, there's more people now. We can't really support you guys as we could when there were only three of you. So I
yeah.
understand that part, but so it started making us look outside because the agreement actually with Futa and FAMU was you do your undergrad and then you do your masters.
Okay.
But thankfully, there was some flexibility around that that
Yeah.
allowed us to go somewhere else for our masters. So I started applying to other schools. I applied for some PhD programs as much as I did not want to do a PhD
Stupid.
program. And thankfully, I did not get accepted into the PhD
Okay.
programs I applied to. So then I got to know about like Wake Forest and this program that FAMU had. So I applied to Wake Forest. Thankfully, I got accepted at Wake Forest. I
Where's Wake
applied.
Forest?
It's in Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So I applied to Wake Forest, got accepted. I applied because FAMU said they had a program where they were encouraging their own students to go for master's program, and that if you get accepted, they'll figure out the funding for you.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I misheard that part, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was because then I got accepted and I went for the private school. And for this accelerated program, I think it was like $60,000. And when I got
Wow.
accepted, they were like, I know, I know, in 10 months. When I got accepted, when I got accepted, they were like, okay, we'll give you a $10,000 scholarship. And I was like,
Still.
yay. But I'm like, I still have 50K
Yeah.
though. And I don't, this didn't include like rent and
Mm-hmm.
upkeep and other things. So I pushed back, or I not pushed back, it's not the right word, but I essentially asked for more, and they
Mm-hmm.
ended up giving me 5K more.
I mean, negotiation,
So
right?
I was still having $45,000.
Yeah.
There about that maybe yeah, ballpark $45,000. So I went back to the graduate feeder program. I was like, I cannot afford 45K. And the guy tried to just like help out. I think it was even through his up, I was able to get 5K more. But then he was frank with me, was like, honestly, that's the best that can happen. It has to be your decision right now. Do you want to do it or not?
Mm.
And I was perplexed to say the least because now I was actually cutting it close. School
Yeah.
was supposed to resume in August. Ideally, if you're applying to a master's program, you should have applied for the previous year, or at least maybe by January,
Yeah.
February. This was May.
Mm.
And school was supposed to resume in August. So it was kind of a dilemma of, okay, what am I going to do? Am I going to accept this engineering management program at FAMU or not get funded? Or this program at Wake Forest, which is actually a business degree. It was like an MBA program and it was
Okay.
very ideal because it was very practical. We had opportunities to do projects for companies and very hands-on program. I liked it. And they
Mhm.
really even prided themselves in the percentage of folks who get a job after they're done. And I was like, well,
Yeah.
that's my goal. So
Okay.
it was really attractive. I loved the opportunity, but then the money was the problem. So I kept contemplating what I was going to do. And so I think I told my parents about it. And my dad is always the person that is like, hey, God can provide.
Mm.
Even though I ballpark you how much you earn, and I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
that's a lot compared to, and I'm not the only child for crying out loud. My sister was
Mm.
in Ukraine during that time too, and that was a lot of money for med school for her. So I remember just going to church one evening, and I can't remember what the actual experience was, but in my mind, it just came in my mind that, okay, the only reason why you will not go if you don't think God can provide. And I was like, okay.
Mm.
And I was like, okay, I'll put this challenge to God that, okay,
Yeah.
God can provide. So eventually I went and I, of course, did not have money for a flight. So I thankfully had some friends who, three of them joined me, rented a car from Tallahassee, drove 12 hours to North Carolina, and they drove back the same day. It was a
How many
blessing and a
hours is
gift of
that? I
friends.
think this
Like 12, like 11,
okay.
over 10 hours, I would
Yeah,
say.
because Florida is actually far.
Yeah, Tallahassee,
Florida
yeah,
is
Florida
far.
is a big state. So from
Yeah.
Tallahassee to Winston-Salem was about 11.
Mm. And they
But
drove back the
thankfully,
same day.
they drove back the same because that was how broke I was. I couldn't rent a car for more than one day for one.
Oh my
I
God.
definitely could not fly and pay for extra luggage. So
Yeah.
the gathering of all the pennies I had together was, let's just drive. And they honestly were so gracious. There were three of them, so
Yeah.
they just exchanged and they
You're
drove
still
back. They
friends with
dropped me
them.
off. They dropped the car the same day. Imagine the rental car company must have felt when you had like
Yeah.
maybe 3,000 miles in one day, and they're like,
Yeah.
wait, where did you
Where
go?
did you go to?
So got to North Carolina, and accommodation now became the next thing, right?
Yeah.
Thankfully, there was someone who had actually reached out to someone else from me. We met at the program, and that person allowed me to stay in his house. I slept on the couch for like 2 weeks when the
Mm.
program first started. So I was there.
That's not easy. Sleeping on the couch is not easy. Sleeping
I
on the
just,
couch in someone's house is
yeah,
something
that
else.
I
I can
barely
sleep.
knew.
Yeah. I can sleep on the couch in my house and be comfortable, but it's a
Yeah,
different level of
yeah, it is. It is because you don't want to
yeah,
feel like, oh, I'm invading your privacy. I mean, of
yeah.
course, I definitely felt that way, but it was honestly very generous. I didn't pay a dime.
Oh wow.
So this, yeah, because I mean, the average American, you don't just like come
Yeah,
to
no,
my.
no, no. Yeah. Wait,
So it
where's it
was
from?
super. He's American. I'm African American, but super
And they
gracious.
say we don't. They say we don't get along. Who says we don't get along?
I again, that's why I'm not a fan of like general statements because there are
Yeah,
definitely amazing people out there.
yeah.
So I stayed with him. So went to Nigeria, came back. But while I was there, I decided to go to the African church on one of the Sundays, and then I met this family who actually were also generous. So
Mm,
they were the ones. She was actually the one who picked me up from the Greyhound station when I go back from Nigeria because I
I can
flew. You
I
want to say
can't
something?
count. Yeah, what is it? I can't count how many times people who have come on this podcast, their connect have been through the church, African
Mm.
church. Yeah, because that's the one first place, church, mosque, where you know gathering of people that
You
have the same
certainly meet an
culture.
African.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
So they were super generous. Because again, pinching pennies and all of that, I had to I think I took a Greyhound from Winston-Salem to Atlanta to fly to Nigeria and then back. And then she picked me up from the Greyhound station and and during my time in Nigeria, I was looking on Craigslist for any apartment I could find.
Yeah.
So I found this one that was relatively cheaper. She drove me from the Greyhound station to that place and she was like, no, Tolu, you cannot stay here. So they
No, I
actually
was about to
housed
say that.
me.
Craigslist
They
houses, please.
actually housed me
Yeah.
for, I think about over 2 weeks, if not a month. The good thing
Mm.
about that was the husband was a professor at my school, and his
Okay.
son was also in the business school, wrapping up his undergrad. So
Oh,
he was able to drive me to school
okay.
every day. So, like, the lines honestly were just falling in
Well,
pleasant
okay.
places
Yeah.
because, again, I was broke. I was getting some money from home, but I honestly didn't want to feel like a burden.
Yeah.
Of course, they didn't say I was, but I guess you just get to a
It's
point where you're
just,
like,
yeah.
this is dollars, and
Yeah.
naira keeps increasing and increasing the exchange rate. Uh, Not to elongate my story too because I'm looking at the time. But when it first happened, even though I was like, okay, God can provide, I actually got a withdrawal letter at some point because I couldn't pay. That's
Wow.
how much of a journey it was. So I did my summer semester, did fall. At the end of it, because they gave me some money, so each semester they take out like that portion they're giving me in scholarships, and then I'm responsible for paying the rest. I think I successfully was able to get enough money to pay off the summer. So that means I
Okay.
was able to apply for fall,
Mm-hmm.
but I couldn't pay off fall up until the end of the semester. So after my exam, in December, I just got an email, essentially a withdrawal letter that I have to leave since I cannot pay. And again, giving more appreciation for coping. Well, I keep saying her name, but the DSO at FAMU, because she would have at least given me options of like, okay, these are
Yeah.
things you can do. You
Mm.
would not get your degree, but you can still go through the school, things like that.
Yeah.
So after I got that letter, that email,
Panicking.
I'm someone that thankfully I would say I don't worry a lot, but
Mm.
that night I couldn't sleep.
Yeah.
Like, that's the peak I've ever been in my life where I'm like, okay, now I don't have a degree because the America that I came, they transferred my credits back to Nigeria.
Yeah.
So I have a full degree, but I've been in the States for over 2 years, and honestly nothing to show for it because if now I drop out of this school, so it
Mm.
was like just many thoughts coming to my mind. The next day I got a call from the immigration office that now since you're technically not a student anymore, you have to leave the country immediately.
That's what they say. That's what they say. I think they say that to cover their ass. Oh, sorry.
Ah.
But technically it's true, but technically there's a way
There's
around
a
that.
way
But
around
anyway,
it, right? Which is again
it's
going back to
not.
your DSO and being able to still
Yeah,
say, okay, this
it's
person.
not because I was in similar situation, but not to cut your story short. Please continue.
Okay, yeah, so I got that call and I was like, okay, is there anything you can do for me? Can I at least get to the beginning of the next semester and at least that way I know I still have like a 2 week grace period so that I'm not out of legal status. I
Mm,
didn't tell my parents about all this because
no,
I just felt like they were gonna freak out. So, but I told my brother and I was like, just pray with me and pray for me because I
your
have no
brother's
idea
back
what.
home.
My brother's
Him.
back in Nigeria.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was like, I haven't told my parents and but of course my dad knew that I'd already told him how much was let's say was
Mm,
honestly scrambling for money. Yeah, trying not to get to of course I don't mind being personal, but I'm also not trying to take too much time.
oh,
But
okay.
oh, do you have a cap on the time? So maybe I stop pressurizing
Mm,
myself.
no,
Okay, so I should stop
honestly,
pressuring
no.
myself
Yeah,
then.
yeah.
But like things like I remember I was talking to my dad once and it was like so when I was in boarding school, high school in Nigeria,
Hmm.
I schooled in the island, Lagos State Model College, Badore. So it
Okay.
was a government school, but the island is more expensive. So my dad
Yeah.
actually did buy a land around that place when I was in school. I was like, that's so cool.
Yeah.
But the thing I'd appreciated, and my dad was like, "Yeah, I'm actually going to sell," and I was like,
Oh
"No, don't
wow.
sell the land because of
Yeah.
me. I'm not your only child." So I was like, "Well, I hope that doesn't happen." But so my dad was in that process of like just
Yeah.
trying to gather as much money as possible. So I didn't tell them. January came, so I went to Florida. Florida was like home for me. So during
Yeah.
the Christmas break, I went to Florida, and honestly, I talked to as many people as I could, just from a
Yep.
standpoint of just pray for me because I don't even know if I'll be school to return to in January.
True.
So January came, money hadn't come. I went back to school. They had already told, so the way it was structured, since it was a very hands-on program, when you start the program, you're in a team. So they had told
Yeah.
my team members that Tolu is not coming back,
Mm.
essentially. So they called me. They were like, "What's going on?" I was like, "I don't have money." That was embarrassing too.
Yeah.
But essentially, and then they came. So they were actually super sweet. Two of them, I think three of them actually came to my apartment and they were like, okay, what can we do? Can we set up a GoFundMe? Can we at least let the school know that the money is going to come from somewhere? And I actually ended up having to set up a GoFundMe that
Yeah.
thankfully did not go public because I'm like, I'm just going to embarrass my family. It's like
Yeah.
exciting. Um, so I actually had all that situated, and I think at that point I'd gotten some money from home, so I
Mm.
was able to pay off a good portion of the previous semester. Or I think I actually paid off the previous semester. So I went back and I talked to the busser's office or the
Yeah.
registrar's office, and the guy honestly too was trying to do as much as he could because he had actually been in several meetings with me. From
Mm.
like throughout December of like when are you gonna pay? When are you gonna pay? When are you gonna pay? And I kept like saying I'm gonna pay, I'm gonna pay.
Yeah.
And then I guess push came to shove and he just had to do what he had to do. So January came and then I went to him and I was like, okay, this is my plan. I have paid off the previous semester. Can you, even if I don't pay this off this semester, withhold my degree?
Yeah.
And then until I pay off, then you give me my degree. And then I said, okay, I've set up a GoFundMe, so I'm hoping to get some money from there. Things like so I outlined my plan and it was like, okay, we'll see what he can do. Thankfully, he got back to me and I got back into school.
Mm.
And so then I was back in school. But as God would have it, long story short, by March I was able to pay off the entire thing, got money
Mm-hmm.
from home. So there wasn't necessarily like a miracle outside of my parents. The miracles
Mm.
happened through my
Yeah.
as much as I wanted it to be external and not a burden to my
Yeah.
parents, it happened through my parents, and I'm thankful for that. I don't have to choose how the
Yeah.
miracle happens. So we got the money, we got it all paid. I graduated in May, and
Okay.
then of course I started applying for jobs since like December because you
Mm.
should since I knew I was graduating in May. So I started applying for jobs, a couple of interviews, all of them fell through. Primarily because, no, I won't say primarily, definitely several reasons besides immigration, but one of the reasons was I couldn't even get some interviews because you have to indicate whether you need sponsorship or not.
Yep.
And in
Yep.
some cases too, I felt like the 1 year OPT was a disadvantage because now companies didn't feel like they had enough time to
Enough
put
time.
together an
Yeah.
H1B application for me.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so I applied from December of the previous year till I graduated. I kept applying and applying and applying. Thankfully, my parents were able to come for a graduation, so that was a really
Oh,
big
they were.
deal.
Oh,
They were there in
nice.
May. Yeah, it was, yeah. So it just all culminated, even though it
Yeah.
was a bumpy ride,
Mm-hmm.
that they were able to attend my graduation. We also applied for, I think, 6 months. I didn't get a job until September. So this was me out of school from May. Another blessing was that, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
You know what I'm thinking? Because
Well,
technically you're supposed to have a job in 90 days and
right,
go
right.
after.
So I think so. I think the good thing was I didn't get my OPT
Okay, your
until,
start date was.
yeah, my start, it was a little, that gave me a buffer. And
Mm-hmm.
then I think the 90-day thing then started counting. But I knew that I think I didn't get a job until I think 7 days before this thing expired, this grace
Wow.
period. So it was me
Wow.
pushing it.
Yeah.
And of course, I got suggestions like you just find a wife, she'll fall for you, or do a PhD program. And I'm like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to do a PhD.
Yeah.
So I honestly was cutting it close. And I would say it's honestly faith that made me do that. And not faith because I honestly just felt like I was believing. But I remember in May after graduating, I was like, God, okay, we're at another junction now. And
Yeah.
honestly, what came to my mind was if he could have brought me through grad
Through.
school and
Yeah.
everything I went through, that work wouldn't be a problem. So honestly, that was what I held on to. So,
Mm.
I should maybe have applied to other schools or at least found a way to get my legal status, but I didn't do that up
Mm.
until October, where I think, yeah, I got the job in September. I started in October, if I remember correctly. And this job was it was a contract job,
Mm.
and
Oh,
they
so you had.
said, yeah, so ideally they don't file for people because I
Okay.
needed that sponsorship.
Yeah.
So I went for it anyway because I was honestly going
Mm-hmm.
for any and
Yeah.
every person that would call
Yeah.
me out. Of course, I had some bad experiences because I had to pay for myself to go to Florida for an interview, and they eventually didn't employ me. But
Yeah.
that was a lesson to that. It's like if they don't value that much to fly you, then
Then there's no
don't
point.
bother.
Mm.
So, but I was so desperate. I didn't know I didn't have the money. Again, blessing upon blessings. Like someone actually did pay for my flights to Florida during that
Hmm.
time. But I graduated in May. Of course, my lease ended, and then I found some people in church who actually were like, "Okay, you can stay with us." So I actually stayed with these people for like 6 months, paying. I mean, sometimes I'll just give like $50 for utilities or whatever because I just wasn't keeping something. But that was again how broke I was during that period also. I also say I mean, I guess testimony time plus the experience and everything
Yeah.
together. But I actually got a car from someone who was like, "Oh, yeah, if anybody needs a car," so that really
Mm.
helped my mobility too. So
Yeah.
blessing upon blessing in those ways. But September came, started this job. The guy was like, "Ideally, we don't file for people, but we like you a lot, so we'll give you a chance." Because again, it was a
Wow.
contract job, and the you want to say something?
I want to say, I think with your story, and not just even your story, but particularly this your story now, we get so consumed with our daily struggle, daily life that we almost trivialize the blessings that we get.
Oh yeah, oh
Sometimes
yeah,
we just be like, yeah, it's because I did this, that's why I got this. If I didn't ask for it, I get this. But really, you could ask and not get.
oh yeah, for sure.
And yeah, it's amazing that we say, oh, Nigerians don't do this. Oh, people, not even Nigerians. Humanity is this, humanity is that, society is this, is that. But really, at the core of it, I think they're still really amazing people.
Oh yeah. Like that's
Very
been the
good people.
culmination of my journey, honestly. Like
Yeah.
a key part. A key part. Like staying with people for free for 6 months, getting a
So
free
six,
car. Actually,
getting a
I
free
first got a
car.
free car in November of that year. So, I started in June, got a free car in November. In January, he called and it was so initially it wasn't supposed to be a free car. It was like, oh, I have a car I'm not using, I'll give it to you. And then he called me like 2 weeks after or so and it was like, you can have the car, I prayed about it. And then in
Mm,
January, he called. It was like, "Oh, someone in church actually has a car. They want to give anybody who needs one. Which car do you want?" Now I'm actually having to choose
wow.
between the one I already have
Did
and
you
the
cry?
I
Have you
mean,
ever
I
at any
can't.
point
Yeah,
cried, like looking back and just, ah, man, this is because honestly, and this is just the abridged version, right? Your first 3 years in US wasn't it wasn't fun.
I would say the first year was relatively
Oh,
because
okay,
then I
okay.
was in Florida with
Oh,
people
okay,
that
yes.
supported. But then as soon as I left Florida, real
Life hits
life,
you. Wow.
it hit me. Like the support system, I had to like essentially just dropped in a place where I knew nobody,
Yeah.
and
Mm,
then just things just happened, and
yeah.
so
Which car did you choose?
so so I chose the more recent one that I was offered. So the previous one was a Honda Pilot,
Okay.
and then the new one was a Toyota Corolla. And I was like, I mean, of course, I like the SUV, but it's a gas guzzler.
As a Nigerian, people who say Nigerians is only Toyota. They don't know how to drive.
But I was like, Toyota Corolla, I can put $40. That was then not even
Word.
$40, probably like 20 something dollars of gas in it, and to
Yeah,
last me
good.
for a week or two.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, considering that, and then insurance wise too, it was also cheaper insurance for the Corolla. So
Mm,
just cutting my coat according to my cloth. So I
yeah.
accepted the newer offer. Well, so job happened in September.
And they said they
Started
like
it
you.
in October. Yeah, because yeah, it was because it was one of those jobs where you speak with the recruiter, and then the recruiter now says come for like a symposium or of sorts, where there's like maybe 20 people that they
Mm,
now tell about the role, and then they now interview people. So it was
okay.
definitely competitive from that standpoint, and
Yeah,
this was a
yeah.
contract role with Microsoft, so of course, big name.
Oh,
So
through an agency.
through an agency, right?
Okay.
But we were interviewed by at least one of the employee. We actually interviewed in the Microsoft building because then it
Okay.
has changed now, but then they allowed contractors to be in the building. So I interviewed, everybody interviewed, so
Hmm.
3 rounds of interviews, and the guy was like, "Yeah, everybody likes you. We're going to give you a chance for the visa." and I was elated.
Yeah.
I was like, you know that song, Dija Dope Me?
Ah. I'm
The
definitely going
victory.
to put that in this video. Oh my god.
But translation is essentially the war is over.
Hmm.
There's victory at last. So I got that, but then I was a little sad because again I knew other of my colleagues who had finished from this program, elite program in its own way, and we're making at least 60, $70,000. This one was
Hmm.
offering me $46,000,
Hmm.
and I was like, really? I have a master's degree. Uh,
Oh my god. Yeah.
but of course, like they're saying that in that situation, that was the only option I had, and it was
Yeah.
evidently a blessing because I only had
Mm.
1 week left again to either get a job or get out of the country.
Oh yeah.
So accepted the offer, and that was another blessing. It started a little rocky because the agreement was they were going to file for me because I only had 1 year.
Mm.
January came for them because normally they start gathering the documents around January so they can submit it in March.
Yeah.
And then I think it was also during the Trump's presidency, and there were
Hmm.
like speculations around, oh, you need to be earning so much to apply for an
Yeah.
H1B visa. And I was like, well, I only earn 45, 46,000. And they
Yeah.
came back to me and they were like, yeah, I don't earn enough. So it won't make sense to file for me. So another journey started in January. I'm like, well, I'm counting down to July 29th, I believe,
Yeah.
where my OPT expires. And it's like, okay, what am I going to
What
do
am I?
again now? I
Oh my
thought this
god.
was over. I have to go back to can I just not be an immigrant anymore? Just go back to my country. And it definitely perplexing again, where I thought, okay, the stress was over.
I want to ask a funny question. Not a funny question. Why didn't you decide to go back?
Why didn't I decide to go back? Good question. Let me see. I don't know if I have an answer for it.
Yeah.
Maybe hope kept me.
Hmm.
And I felt like I pushed it to the limit at several points.
Hmm.
And even though I didn't agree with myself, I felt like, okay, if push comes to shove, I will go back home. So kind of the job
Mm.
situation where I didn't get a job until 1 week before, I was essentially already gathering my thoughts that, okay, I think I will just, as much as I didn't internalize it, it was definitely
Yeah.
something in my mind where it's like, okay, I would definitely not settle for being illegal in this country. I would
True.
rather go home. So I had
Yeah.
those two options. And towards the end of the line, something pops up.
Mm.
So you have another question?
Oh no, no, that's an
Okay.
interesting answer. No.
Yeah. So January happened, and then the race started again. I started now applying to some graduate schools because
Mm.
I was like, okay, I guess I'll go to another master's. But then I now learned that you cannot get two OPTs on the same degree level.
Yes.
So it has to be a
Correct.
PhD.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not doing a PhD. It doesn't help my career in any
Yeah.
way. um, So I applied. I actually did get into Duke for a master's program.
Oh
I
wow.
don't know what's with me and applying to private schools actually,
Yeah.
because they got back to me with the fee, and I was
Yeah.
like, definitely not. Like,
Yeah.
I'm
I'm
not
not going
paying,
through that
not doing this
again.
again. But then church again was another influence. So now I was in Charlotte. So the work was in Charlotte, North Carolina. And church was another. So I was now speaking with this senior or elder brother in church, telling him about my situation. He heard it and he was like, "Oh, Tolu, you'll be fine." I was like, "Do you see how stressed I am? Like, how does you telling me I'll be fine help?" So it felt like it was disregarding what I was going through, but apparently he had been through a very similar
Mm.
process. So then he told me about this college actually, because the notion I had coming to the country was that as an international student, you cannot do online programs because you
Mm.
need to be in person.
In person.
So, but then he told me about this program that actually was online, but then they fulfilled the in-person requirement also by requiring to be on campus, I think, over 20 hours a
Yes.
semester.
Hmm.
So that was like an epiphany because, wow, revelation, like, okay,
Yeah.
there's a potential here where you can now be a student and be on CPT.
Yes.
The new hurdle now became pitching it to my employers that, hey, would you guys be able to be happy to sign that I am essentially doing a program that aligns with what the work I'm doing.
Yeah.
And because again, you have to prove that you're doing CPT.
Hmm.
I was like, they're not going to agree. This is so sketchy and all of that. But then I brought it up to the account manager, HR manager at some point, and he was like, "Dude, will do anything to keep you here because they've been trying to
Wow.
scram." And that was his response, and I was like, "Okay."
I'm lucky wanting to say, should have increased. They should have met the salary.
If they could do anything, right? But again, as a
Yeah.
contractor, because it was a
Yeah. True.
level,
True.
so almost everybody at my level
True.
were earning
True.
the same thing. So that was his response. So I tried several times. It actually took different tries for him to like sign, okay, this is your work description, this is your work description, like four times before it eventually got approved and I was able to like align with the school and my work. So actually I call it paying rent for my stay in this country for 3 years where I was in
Mm.
school. And it was a relatively cheaper program. It was
Yeah.
like $11,000 a year. So essentially, and they were flexible with their payments. So I
Oh,
got it down
yeah.
to a
That's not bad.
thousand payment, a
Yeah.
$1,000 per month. So I
Yeah.
called it my rent for the country. So
Yeah.
another 1,000 leaving my paycheck every month.
Hmm.
So I did that through the summers, but it was stressful on many occasions because now my weekends were not as fun because then I had to like write papers, take classes, do
Mm.
assignments, also go to school at certain points in the semester. At certain points in the semester, so that I could fulfill the F1 requirement of being in person. Did that started in August 2019, did it throughout 2020. COVID kind of was a blessing in that respect because
Hmm.
then I didn't have to be in person anymore
Yes.
because now the
Okay.
international stay can be fully online. So
Mm.
I went through 1 year of not being in person. Actually 2 years because 2021 too was there.
Yeah.
So 21 and then but over those years they still didn't file for my H1B. And that's because I think part of the reason was because of my pay.
Mm.
So they were now pushing towards 2020, 2021. Oh, actually, 2021 was when they now filed for me, if I'm right.
Okay.
21, 21. When did I get married? I got married 22, 22. Yeah, to 21.
Okay.
21.
I actually didn't even know you were married.
Oh, yeah. So I'm married. I got
Okay.
married 2 years ago, 2022.
I think I heard something about that. Now that I'm thinking back,
Yeah.
did you go
Yeah.
to Nigeria?
No, I did not. So that was not me.
Oh, maybe I'm just okay.
Yeah, I didn't go to my thing. That's it, thankfully. My parents miraculously were able to come because that's
Okay.
another miracle.
Mm-hmm.
So 2020 came. This is me being 1 year in the program already, and they were like, okay, they won't file in 2020, but then they'll start working towards filing in 2021. So this guy who I would call my sponsor, because honestly that's what he was honestly advocating for me, was finding ways to one, make sure that my salary was high enough for
Mm.
filing. And also I think he was also looking for ways to make my bonus a part of my base pay,
Okay.
so that it appears really high. And that's honestly what happened. So I filed in 2021, thankfully, because again, it's one thing to file, it's another thing to be
Yeah.
picked
To
in
be
the
picked.
lottery.
Yeah.
So I was picked in April, and I felt like a final Ijadopin situation
Yeah.
because like, okay, now at least 3 years, three
At
years minimum
least. Hmm.
to rest. But then the H1B came in October, and it was 1 year because it was a contract job.
Oh, yeah. That's
I was
true.
like,
That's
what?
true. Yeah, that's true. I forgot. Yeah,
Because the
that
contract
is
job they renew every
which.
year,
Yeah,
which definitely
I've
was
met.
low stakes. Not like
Yeah.
not because
Hmm.
again the probability of renewing is high, but I was still like I just want to get out of this cycle.
Yeah.
You were gonna say something?
Oh no, I wanted to say, yeah, I've met a couple of contractors that they have to renew every 6 months. Yeah,
That's even
it's
worse.
yeah. So one on one hand, they are worried that they don't get fired because it's a contract job. On the other hand, they're worried about getting renewed every 6 months.
Right.
So wow,
Just this
yeah,
roller coaster.
yeah.
So that happened. I got the physical copy of the H1B in October. So then I dropped out of school because I'd now been in school for 2 years, finished the
Mhm.
first degree that I honestly did not want, but
Yeah,
finished the master's in information technology, and
Oh,
then
okay.
actually I had to start another one because I needed to stay in legal status up till my
Yeah.
H1B started in October. But as soon as that one came like this, I
I ain't
dropped out
doing
of the
this.
program, not
Yeah.
thinking twice. And as God will have it, in November or probably October, a recruiter reached out to me on LinkedIn. I was like, "Oh, there's this opportunity, XYZ," and I was like, "Yeah, sure," because that's one thing I always do. Whenever it's a job I potentially am interested in, or that maybe in the
Hmm.
future I can be interested in, I'll speak to the recruiter, go through the
Yeah.
interview, and see how much I can be earning out there. So I did the interview, and it was honestly a favorable process. It went really well, and I got an offer. And they were also happy with transferring my H1B, which is another process because I was like, well, would they be
Yep.
interested? And they were like, yeah, we'll be fine with transferring. And the good thing about that, your employer doesn't even need to know what is going on in the background.
Yep.
So I got the offer and I was like, oh my God, this is a dilemma. These people have really helped and, did all this.
Hmm.
Don't react yet. Then, so I actually reached out to a couple of friends and mentors and I was like, I don't want to burn this bridge because the
Mm.
sponsor has really been supportive. But I also am trying to
I
like
need my
work
life is
hours with that job was some
yeah.
days 10-hour, 12-hour days.
Hmm.
Granted, it was fully working from home, but still. And also, the pay for this new job was much better.
Hmm.
And it was also fully remote. And they were like, dude, if you're going to fire you, they will not give you a heads up. Put yourself first. And I was like,
Mm.
okay.
Yeah.
And the good thing about this also was then I was going to get a 3-year H1B,
Yeah.
not the 1-year one that I was going to renew. So I accepted the offer and then I left them in January of the next year.
Um,
And I spoke with the sponsor. I was like, yeah, if I were in your
mm,
shoes, I'll make the
I
same
would do the
decision.
same.
Would I do what I did for you for another person? Maybe not. It kind of made me sad in terms of like the work, the accent he went to get me the H1B and then
mm,
not really reaping the fruits. But then I'm like, I paid my
mm,
dues about the last 3 years.
yeah. Yeah, that
So I felt a
situation
little
was.
bad, but then he definitely was gracious though. Like I get it. I get it. But would I do it for someone
Um,
else? Maybe not.
uh, I don't think it's because of your decision to leave. I think it's just because he did it for you not to stay. He did it because of the quality of your work, really. I mean, that's how I
Actually,
see it. So if someone else comes along and matches that same standard, it's not going to be, oh, Tolu, I did this for Tolu and he left. It's going to be, oh, yeah, this person is worth it. I mean, that's how I see it, really.
good
So,
point.
I mean, for him, at that point, might be, I shouldn't believe it. I was in, I was in, I was in the same boat 2021 because it's funny because the company I was moving to, they were waiting for me to get my H1 because I had a RFE. They were waiting for me to get my H1B approved so I can transfer it. So I already had the offer. And the company I was with at the time were like, oh yeah, my manager was saying things about, oh yeah, we have 3 years. I was laughing like, dude, do you know how much you're paying? My guy. My guy. I'm so sorry. So immediately he came. 2 weeks, I told them I was leaving. I gave them 2 weeks. Like the H1 became today. The next day, I told my manager I was leaving. He was gracious with it. I mean, we didn't talk to the extent. Oh, we did. He said, honestly, dude, with the whole immigration, I understand why you're leaving. It's more money. It's better position. If I wear your shoes, I'll probably do the same. But I do understand how they can count it as a loss for them as a company.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, in terms
I feel that.
financially and workforce wise. But but honestly, I I got paid for the job I did, and you were so invested because of the quality of job I was doing.
That's true.
So, but yeah,
That's true. Yeah.
well,
So
and
I feel like that's high level. How so now I'm still on H1.
mhm.
and I need to extend it by the end of this year. That's totally my journey. When I
Okay.
look back, though, knowing what I know now, I may have done a master's in a STEM field, even though I don't regret it because again, everything still worked out. But I know that was it kind of made it harder to get a job. And I think things actually got better because I don't know, these days people seem to be getting jobs easier. I don't know
I was
if
going
things
to
are
ask that.
easier or I don't know. I don't know, but
I
it just
think I think things seem easier because people like us, people like you, people ask, "Oh, how far? I want to do this," and they're like, one of the first things you probably tell them is it a STEM course? Do this, apply to this school. This is how you get scholarship. So, considerably, might be easier because of the quality of information they have access to, which
probably,
is
probably.
comparatively great. I mean, even like first, second, third set, maybe third set from footer.
Yeah, I
You
think I'm third
really,
or fourth.
you just really wanted to leave, um, and you left. But now you look back and say, I'm not that you regret, but more of appreciate the journey. Kind of.
Honestly, yeah. That's honestly, I just look back and I'm like, wow, in those moments, definitely didn't feel like it.
Yeah,
But then when I talk to people now, when I tell them you'll be fine,
yeah,
I tell them
yeah.
why I say you'll be fine because it's you actually be fine. It definitely can look really
Mhm.
bumpy in the moment, but you'll be fine.
I the company that filed my first H1B for me filed one day to its expire closing,
And you got picked.
and I got picked. So I saw. I should have discussed this. I was contemplating. I saw this tweet where one girl was, if you can't afford to pay your school fees, go for me, isn't it? She said that like,
Go for
yeah,
what?
go fund me isn't the way.
Oh,
She tweeted that I think last year, and then I think she got admission into the school in the UK a year later, and like now she's asking for people's help. So,
that's
I'm like,
sad.
yeah, it's sad. I think generally immigration journey has just taught me to be there's context, situation. There's just so many sides to the story. What you would think is ethically wrong for you in terms of, oh, this is what I can do, this is what I cannot do. Things will test you when you
Oh
leave
yeah.
your comfort
Oh
zone.
yeah.
So you grow in places, you grow up and be like, yeah, I do need to handle this. I need to own this. But being able to draw the line and say, okay, this is what I wouldn't do is also one really hard thing to do. Yeah. Because in all those challenges that I faced, that you faced, you probably saw some of your friends that went through the route of things that you ethically for you, ethically, religiously, spiritually is not right for you, like, for your own reasons. Not that you're judging them, but it's just, oh, I wouldn't do this, and then not because you are not doing it, but the fact that you can stay, what's the word? You can stand on your word, on whatever you believe in, is the more admirable thing. Not that, oh, I'm judging you that you're not doing this, or I'm judging you that you're doing this. It's more about, I've said I won't do this, and I won't do. I'm not, especially when you think about it. Oh, this is why I'm not doing it. I don't just believe in it, but anyway, that's maybe this is more personal to me because I went through like before the episode. I said, oh, okay, yeah, I actually cried. I cried a couple of times. Like, God, and I asked myself, is it not going to be easy to go back? But
Exactly.
the question is, where do I want to start from? And
That
honestly,
too, yeah.
yeah. And honestly, for me also, this shouldn't be a factor, but it was a factor for me. What would people say?
Mm,
I don't know. It was really something I thought about. I say this one has come out from America. Most of the people that go to America, they usually stay. But then, like I said, it shouldn't have been a factor for me, but it was.
yeah.
And it really pushed me. But but that's great. Just do you regret migrating?
I mean, how do I put it now? It's impossible to say yes, considering
Mm,
how things have turned out. Maybe if you
mm,
asked me this in December of 2017, after I got the withdrawal letter and I sat at the corner of my room wondering
yeah,
what
that's.
is next,
Mhm.
maybe it would have been a yes. But I don't know. Long what's the word now? Short way to answer your question is no, I do not.
Okay.
I do not. Everything
Yeah.
has worked out, and I remember how in grad school I definitely was praying for money to come, and interestingly, was even having dreams of wait, the money will come.
Mm,
But then at some point, I just stopped praying, and I was like, God, whatever you were trying to develop in me, whatever
mm,
attitude or perspective, just help me become what you want me to become as a result of this. Like my prayer point is entirely changed. So I'd say
mm.
it has definitely developed me in terms of just
True.
belief and just that peace that I have when things
Mm,
don't seem to be going well, knowing that
mm,
God is here, is gonna work
mm.
it out.
It's definitely interesting how you see just beyond the situation and just
That
that
yeah, I
challenge.
learned that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Nice. Nice.
But I didn't cry. If tears don't come that easily for me, but if it could, it would have come at certain
Oh
points.
no, I. Mm.
It's just maybe moments of prayer where you're just like, Baba, I don't know what's
Hey,
right
Baba.
now.
No, 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 no. Yeah, I shared a couple of tears in the car. I
Mm.
think I was driving back. I'm like, what's happening, man? What's happening? What's this? What's this?
Especially when you see your counterparts who seem to be having
Yeah.
it easy. Again, you don't know their
You don't
stories,
know their story. True.
but
True.
it's like, what am I doing wrong?
Yeah. Yeah, that time I was driving an hour to from for PhD for classes, and I was also working.
Stress.
But anyway, it's you just look back and you're like, yeah, it's something. It's one of those. You know how they say, what's the when they say, oh yeah, experiences really like push makes you better. It's those kind of experiences that you know, okay, yeah, I do this because I know where I'm going to. It's
Hmm.
way better than this. This is not the bus stop.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
What doesn't kill you make you stronger.
yes, 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 exactly. But anyway, any yeah, happy married life. I
Thank
think
you.
I'm allowed to say it
Oh,
because I am. I'm not. This is the first time I'm hearing.
thank you.
Congratulations.
Appreciate it.
Who favorite city or favorite place you've stayed
In
in America?
in America
Yeah.
specifically.
Hmm.
I love Charlotte. I
Yeah.
do.
I've never
I
been.
do. It's a beautiful city. It's just a mix of everything I want. Having
Okay.
an airport that is fairly major.
Okay.
I won't call it major major because it can't go to Nigeria straight up, but it goes to
Um.
Atlanta first and then Nigeria.
Oh.
And it's also the hub for American Airlines, so you definitely would always
Oh.
get at least an
Okay.
American airline flight. Unlike where I am right now, that only American Airlines flies in and out of
Yeah.
it.
Okay.
So it's much more. So I love it for that, just being able to get in and out of the city. It's
Yeah.
also very close to like mountains. We love to hike a lot, so I
Mm.
love it for
Oh,
that.
you hike? Okay, that's nice. So.
Yeah, so that's one thing I've picked up living with friends in
Yeah.
Winston-Salem. Actually went camping once. It was interesting. I won't
Oh
say
wow.
fun, but it was interesting.
It was interesting.
It was an
Oh.
adventure.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is that about Charlotte? The community I've developed there too. I was there for
Okay.
3 years, and amazing people that I have come to meet. It's getting busier traffic wise and more expensive too.
Yeah.
With COVID, a
Mhm.
lot of people moved to Charlotte. So
Yeah.
houses that used to be 200K probably not get it for anything less than 300K right now.
Mm.
Um, so in that way, it's getting a little more expensive, but I still love it. It's super central.
Okay. Mm. Nice, nice. Mm. Last question. What's your advice to potential immigrants, especially the ones wanting to come to America? What will you say they should look out for?
Let me
Oh,
think deep before I answer that one. I only have one
uh,
shot at this.
yeah. Actually, I have one more question.
Okay.
Okay, just should
You know,
I
answer
should I
that one
ask it?
first.
Okay, so usually before earlier seasons, what we do is we ask. Since it's only me now, I'm going to ask. Maybe you should scratch that question. Let's do this one instead. If you were in a position of power, say to enact one or two immigration policies, what will you do? What what will you do? What will your reforms be? And I know you said you're not a politician, but
Ooh,
it
that
could be
isn't
based on
necessarily peculiar to Nigerians.
yes, just on the broad spectrum of
Huh.
and you can think about what is happening now in terms of um, immigration policies, the reforms from H1B, F1 to
Yeah.
as broad as possible. Really.
It's a hard question, but I'll answer from a a kind of a small angle to the entire big picture, and that would be for allowing the spouses of people who are either students or who are on H1B to work. I think the mental toll it takes sometimes on spouses
Mm,
it's not good. I actually lived in a community that was very heavy. I actually lived with an Indian roommate who had to make a decision of either going back home because his wife already had like a good stability in terms of the work she was doing, or staying on H1B here and bringing her and his daughter, and her coming here and being a stay-at-home mom and having
yeah,
nothing to do. So I think in terms of that, and I haven't seen it primarily. Well, I haven't personally had any Nigerian in that situation that I'm aware of. I probably know some that I can't think of right now. Oh, actually do know a couple Nigerians, but I've seen it very prominent to the Indian community, and I feel like it affects them
mm,
mentally.
yeah,
Yeah, it's like I have my own thing going on, but now I can't do anything. It affects relationships too, because I just like I'm
true.
sacrificing for this person. So that's one thing I would change, and I think that's one thing the UK does well, where the
Mm,
spouses of whoever is a student or whoever is working also can work. That's what I would change.
yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting, especially from the perspective of the toll. I've never thought about that before, and it should be. You should think about it, especially when they come as student F1 F visa class, yeah, the F2 cannot work.
Yeah.
It's just dependent, and yeah, that's really deep. That's really deep. But yeah, anyway, thank you. Thank you for coming on this podcast on this episode. And for opening season three, very interesting story, very interesting immigration navigation from where you were and where you are now. It's, yeah, bless God for where you are. What do I want to say? So everybody, like I said, we really, like I said before, we're just trying to build a community. We're trying to build, share as much as possible in terms of information through personal experiences. Yeah, you can check out answer to ansrd.io. And yeah, we're going to be on YouTube more and social media. Um, thank you again. Do you have anything you want to share? A brand, a business that you want people to know about, or anything basically?
No, no,
No.
nothing. I would say good conversation. I share it with as many people as care to hear.
Mm,
Just knowing that in the moment things may be hard, but you'll be
mm,
fine. As
yeah,
long as you stick to the path. And the beauty of that is it makes you stronger.
yeah,
So thanks
yeah,
for letting me share my story, and thanks for creating this platform. I think it's an amazing one, and really hopefully it helps a lot of people through their journey.
yeah. Thank you for coming on. Yes. Thank you. See you on YouTube, on any platform that you listen to your podcast on. Will be there. Uh, thank you.